Hi, everyone. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You have done the work. You have read the books, said the affirmations, tried to shift your mindset around money, and yet something still feels heavy. Something still feels like no matter how hard you push, there's an invisible wall between you and the financial freedom you know you deserve. What if that wall was never built by you? What if everything that has been holding you back, every limiting belief about money, about worthiness, about what is possible for someone like you, was never yours to begin with? That is exactly what Bashar taught me, and the moment I truly understood it, I stopped fighting myself and started putting down baggage I had been carrying since childhood without even knowing it. If you are ready for that kind of freedom, stay with me. This conversation might be the one that changes everything. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. This is exactly what we talk about on this channel. The books that changed my relationship with money and abundance are linked in the description, and so is a free PDF on how to interpret angel numbers and equal hours. Go grab yours. I want you to think about something for a moment. Think about the beliefs you carry about money. The ones that show up quietly in the background when you look at your bank account, when an opportunity presents itself, when someone talks about wealth and financial freedom in a way that feels almost foreign to you, like they are describing a world that exists for other people but not quite for you. Where did those beliefs come from? I mean, really, where did they come from? Did you sit down one day as a conscious, fully formed adult and carefully evaluate the available evidence and decide, yes, I have chosen to believe that financial freedom is out of reach for me. I have reviewed all the data, and this is the conclusion I have arrived at. Of course not. Nobody does that. And yet, here we are. Most of us walking around with an entire architecture of beliefs about money, success, worthiness, and abundance that we never consciously chose. Beliefs that were handed to us before we even had the cognitive capacity to question them, before we even knew that questioning them was an option. This is the teaching that stopped me completely when I first encountered it through Bashar, and it is one of the most liberating ideas I have ever come across, both in the world of consciousness and in the world of finance. Bashar puts it simply and directly. If you feel held back, if you feel dragged down by certain ideas and beliefs within you, that should be your first clue that you are carrying around someone else's baggage, someone else's belief system, something that was never yours to begin with. And when I heard that, something in me exhaled, because I had spent years inside the financial and insurance world, years trying to build something of my own, years doing the inner work, carrying this quiet, persistent sense that I was somehow not quite the kind of person who got to have real financial freedom, not quite the kind of person who got to work on her own terms, build her own wealth, live without the structure of a system telling her what she was worth. And I had always assumed that belief was mine, that it came from something real, that it was, on some level, the truth about me. But here is what Bashar explains, and what I have come to understand more deeply with every year that passes. We did not arrive in this world with those beliefs. We arrived open. We arrived as pure consciousness, with no inherited story about what money means, what we deserve, what is possible for us, or what kind of life someone like us gets to have. And then, life happened. We were born into families who had their own relationship with money, their own fears, their own ceilings, their own stories about wealth and struggle, and what it means to be financially responsible or irresponsible. We grew up in schools that taught us directly or indirectly that there's a certain kind of person who succeeds financially and a certain kind who doesn't. We absorbed messages from our culture, our religion, our social circle, our media, all of it painting a picture of what money is, who deserves it, and how hard you have to work to get it. And we swallowed all of it. Not because we were weak or naive, but because we were children, because we needed to belong, because we needed the people around us to take care of us, to love us, to include us. And the price of that inclusion, often unconsciously, was agreeing with their version of reality. Bashar describes it perfectly. By the time you grow up, it has become so unconscious, so automatic, that you don't even realize you swallowed all these belief systems that have nothing to do with who you truly are. I think about the financial beliefs I inherited growing up. The idea that money was something you worked hard for and held on to tightly because it could disappear at any moment. The idea that wanting more than enough was somehow greedy or unrealistic. The idea that financial security came from a stable job, a predictable paycheck, a system you could count on, even if that system cost you your freedom, your time, and your joy. None of those beliefs were mine. They were my family's beliefs, shaped by their experiences, their fears, their generation's relationship with money and survival. And they loved me. They were doing their best. But in passing those beliefs on, as all families do, as all cultures do, they handed me a suitcase full of someone else's financial story, and I carried it for years without ever stopping to check what was inside. And here's the thing about carrying someone else's baggage. It is exhausting, not just emotionally, but energetically. In the world of investments, we talk about the drag on a portfolio, the hidden costs, the inefficiencies, the positions that are quietly pulling down your overall returns without you even noticing. Inherited beliefs work exactly the same way. They create a constant energetic drag on your ability to attract, build, and sustain abundance. They are the positions in your consciousness portfolio that are costing you more than you realize, silently, consistently, every single day. And the most insidious part, because they feel so familiar, because they have been running in the background for so long, they feel like the truth. They feel like you. They feel like reality. But they are not reality. They are a story, someone else's story filed under your name. And the moment you begin to see that, the moment you start to recognize that the beliefs dragging you down were never yours to carry, something begins to shift. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly and profoundly, and in a direction that changes everything. Because you cannot put down a bag you do not know you're holding. But once you see it, once you really see it for what it is, borrowed, inherited, never truly yours, the grip starts to loosen. And that's exactly where we're going next, because understanding where these beliefs came from is only the beginning. What happens when they take root, when they go underground into your subconscious and start running the show without your permission, that's where things get really interesting. So now we know where the baggage came from. We know that the beliefs dragging us down, the ones whispering that financial freedom is for other people, that wealth is hard to come by, that we are not quite the kind of person who gets to have the life we truly want, were absorbed unconsciously in childhood from the world around us. We did not choose them. We inherited them. And for a long time, we did not even know we were carrying them. But here's where it gets even more important to understand. Because knowing where a belief came from is one thing, understanding what it does once it takes root, how it quietly, efficiently, and systematically shapes every financial decision, every abundance block, every moment of self-sabotage, that is a completely different level of awareness, and it is the level that actually changes things. Let me explain what happens when an inherited belief goes underground. When we are children and we absorb these belief systems about money, about worthiness, about what is possible for people like us, they do not stay on the surface. They do not remain as conscious thoughts we can examine and question. Over time, through repetition and reinforcement, they sink. They migrate from the conscious mind down into the subconscious, where they stop being thoughts we have and start being the invisible framework through which we see everything. In the financial world, we have a term for this kind of invisible framework, a mental model. Every investor, every trader, every financial professional operates through a set of mental models, assumptions about how markets work, how risk behaves, what patterns mean, what outcomes are likely. And here's the critical thing about mental models. They are incredibly powerful precisely because they are invisible. They are not something you consciously apply. They are the lens through which you automatically interpret everything you see. When your mental model is accurate and aligned with reality, it helps you make better decisions faster. It gives you an edge. It allows you to see opportunities that others miss and avoid risks that others walk into blindly. But when your mental model is built on inherited, inaccurate, someone else's data, it does the same thing, just in reverse. It filters out opportunities that don't match its programming. It flags abundance as dangerous. It interprets every financial possibility through the lens of the old story and finds reasons every single time to confirm that story rather than challenge it. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human cognition. Once a belief is established in the subconscious, the mind does not evaluate new information neutrally. It scans for evidence that confirms what it already believes and unconsciously filters out anything that contradicts it. Which means that if your inherited belief says wealth is not safe for people like me, your subconscious will find confirmation of that belief everywhere it looks. Every financial setback becomes proof. Every missed opportunity becomes evidence. Every success story you hear about someone else becomes a reminder of the gap between them and you. And here's what makes this so insidious. It all happens below the level of conscious awareness. You are not sitting there thinking, I am now going to confirm my limiting beliefs about money. You're just living your life, making decisions, responding to opportunities, navigating your financial reality, while an invisible program runs in the background, quietly steering everything in the direction of the old story. I saw this pattern constantly in my years working in financial services and insurance. Brilliant people, genuinely intelligent, capable, hardworking people making financial decisions that made absolutely no sense from a purely logical standpoint, passing up investments that checked every rational box, staying in situations that were clearly costing them more than they were gaining, choosing the familiar discomfort of financial limitation over the unfamiliar possibility of genuine wealth and freedom. And when you looked beneath the surface, when you got past the logical justifications and the practical explanations, you almost always found the same thing: a belief. An old, inherited, someone else's belief about what they deserved, what was safe, what was possible for a person like them, running silently in the background, shaping every choice without ever announcing itself. I had a client once, someone I worked with during a consulting project, who had been trying to break through a particular financial ceiling for years. She was doing everything right on paper. She had the knowledge, the strategy, the work ethic. But every time she got close to a real breakthrough, something would happen: an unexpected expense, a deal that fell through at the last minute, a decision that seemed completely rational in the moment, but pulled her back almost magnetically to exactly where she had started. When we started exploring her belief system around money, we discovered something fascinating. Her mother had grown up in genuine financial scarcity, real hardship, real instability, real fear around money. And as a result, her mother had developed a deep, unconscious belief that money beyond a certain amount was dangerous, that too much success attracted problems, that it was safer, smarter, wiser to stay within certain financial limits. My client had never consciously adopted that belief. She would have rejected it completely if you had presented it to her directly, but she had absorbed it through years of watching her mother's relationship with money, through the subtle messages embedded in 1,000 small moments growing up. And now, decades later, that inherited belief was running her financial life like a background program she didn't even know was installed. This is what Bashar means when he talks about beliefs that have become so unconscious, so automatic, that you don't even realize you swallowed them. They are not thoughts you are thinking. They are the water you are swimming in, the air you are breathing, the invisible architecture of your entire financial reality. And the vibration, the energetic frequency of those inherited beliefs, is completely out of alignment with the abundance, freedom, and wealth you are trying to attract. which means that no matter how many affirmations you do, no matter how many vision boards you create, no matter how clearly you can picture the life you want, if the subconscious program is running a different frequency underneath all of that, the signal gets scrambled, the manifestation stalls, the money doesn't flow the way you know it should. Because you cannot broadcast two conflicting frequencies at the same time and expect a clear signal. You cannot consciously affirm abundance while unconsciously vibrating scarcity and expect the universe to receive anything other than static. This is not a failure of the law of attraction. This is the law of attraction working perfectly, responding to the dominant frequency. And when the dominant frequency is an inherited belief running silently in your subconscious, that is what gets reflected back to you in your financial reality. But here is the good news, and it is genuinely, profoundly good news. The subconscious is not a locked vault. It is not a permanent sentence. It is a program, and programs can be updated. Beliefs that were installed without your conscious consent can be examined, questioned, and released with your conscious awareness. And the way that process begins, the exact moment Bashar points to as the most important one in the entire journey, is something so simple, so available, so completely within your reach right now that most people walk past it 100 times a day without recognizing it for what it is. That moment, that signal, we are going to talk about it next. And once you understand what it is and what it means, you will never experience it the same way again. So here we are. We have traced the baggage back to its origin, the unconscious absorption of someone else's belief system, swallowed in childhood simply to belong, to be loved, to survive in the world we were born into. We have seen how those inherited beliefs migrate underground into the subconscious, where they run silently and efficiently as invisible programs shaping every financial decision, every abundance block, every moment where the life we want feels just slightly out of reach. And now we arrive at the part that I find most fascinating about Bashar's teaching on this subject, because everything we have covered so far, as important and as liberating as it is still largely theoretical. It is the map. But what we are about to talk about is the compass, the real-time, in-the-moment, always available signal that tells you exactly where the inherited beliefs are hiding and when they are running the show. Bashar describes it simply. He calls it the moment when something you say about yourself in a circumstance feels like it is rubbing you the wrong way as you say it. That feeling, that subtle internal friction, that moment when a thought or a belief or a story about yourself crosses your mind and something inside you, something deeper than logic, something more honest than your conditioned mind, quietly flinches. Most of us have been trained to ignore that signal, to push past it, to rationalize it away with practical explanations and logical justifications. We tell ourselves we are just being realistic. We tell ourselves we are managing expectations. We tell ourselves that the uncomfortable feeling is just fear, and fear is just part of the process, and the mature thing to do is to feel it and keep moving in the same direction anyway. But Bashar is pointing to something completely different here. He is saying that the friction, that internal rubbing the wrong way, is not an obstacle on the path. It is the path. It is the most precise, most direct, most honest signal your consciousness has access to. And the moment you learn to recognize it for what it is, everything changes. Let me give you a concrete example of what this feels like in the context of money and financial freedom. You are in a conversation, maybe with a colleague, maybe with a friend, maybe just with yourself in the quiet of your own mind, and someone brings up the idea of building real wealth, of achieving genuine financial independence, of working on your own terms, generating income from multiple streams, living without the constant low-grade anxiety of financial insecurity. And something in you, before your conscious mind even has a chance to respond, contracts, tightens, pulls back slightly. And then the thought comes, that's not really something that happens for people like me. Or, I'm not the kind of person who's good with money. Or, every time I've tried to get ahead financially, something has pulled me back. And as you think it, or worse, as you say it out loud, there is a moment, a split second where something inside you recognizes that what you just said does not feel true, not deeply true, not aligned with the version of yourself that exists underneath all the inherited programming. It feels like you're wearing someone else's clothes, like you are reciting lines from a script that was written for a different character entirely. That moment, that flicker of internal friction, is what Bashar is pointing to. And he is saying, stop there, right there. Do not walk past that moment. Do not rationalize it. Do not smooth it over with practical thinking. Because right then and right there is the most important moment for you to start getting in touch with what those beliefs are that are in your unconscious mind. I remember the first time I truly paid attention to this signal in my own life. I was still working in the financial and insurance world, sitting in a meeting, listening to a conversation about long-term financial planning and retirement and all the conventional markers of financial success. And someone asked me, casually, in passing, whether I had ever thought about building something of my own, a business, a portfolio, something outside the structure of the corporate system. And I heard myself say, almost automatically, "Oh, I'm not really an entrepreneur. I'm better in a structured environment." And the moment those words left my mouth, something in me recoiled, not dramatically, not in a way that anyone in the room would have noticed, but internally, clearly, unmistakably, something said, that is not true. Not the practical part of my mind, not the part that was calculating risk and stability and the sensible financial decision, something deeper, something that existed underneath all of that, something that knew with a quiet and absolute certainty that what I had just said was not my truth. It was a belief I had absorbed from years inside a system that rewarded conformity, from messages about what financial security looked like, from a version of success that had been handed to me before I was old enough to define it for myself. That moment of friction, that internal flinch, was my consciousness trying to get my attention, trying to show me exactly where the borrowed baggage was sitting and exactly what it was costing me. And this is precisely why Bashar says this is the most important moment, because most of us, when we feel that friction, do one of two things. We either push the feeling down, dismiss it as impractical, unrealistic, too risky to take seriously, or we feel it and assume it means the belief is true, that the discomfort is confirmation of our limitation rather than a signal pointing us toward our freedom. But Bashar is offering a completely different interpretation. He is saying the friction is not proof that the belief is correct. The friction is proof that the belief does not belong to you, that it is out of alignment with your true self, that it is, at its core, someone else's story running through your consciousness, and your deeper self is rejecting it. Think about what this means for your financial life. Every time you feel that quiet internal resistance when you think about abundance, every time something contracts inside you when you consider the possibility of real wealth, real freedom, real prosperity, that is not your intuition warning you away from something dangerous. That is your true self pushing back against a borrowed belief that was never yours to carry. In the world of portfolio management, there is a process called rebalancing. It is the practice of regularly reviewing your holdings and bringing them back into alignment with your actual investment goals, selling off the positions that are dragging down your returns, and reallocating toward the assets that are truly serving your financial vision. It is not a dramatic process. It is not about blowing up your entire portfolio and starting from scratch. It is simply about paying attention to what is out of alignment and making the conscious choice to correct it. The internal friction Bashar describes is your consciousness doing exactly that. It is your true self flagging the positions in your belief portfolio that are out of alignment with your actual goals, the inherited beliefs that are dragging down your energetic returns, the borrowed stories that are quietly undermining the abundance you are trying to build. And the practice, the real, daily, moment-by-moment practice, is simply to stop when you feel that friction, to pause, to pay attention, to bring that belief into the light of your conscious awareness instead of letting it continue to operate in the dark of your subconscious. because a belief that is unconscious has all the power. It runs unchallenged, unexamined, completely in control of the show. But a belief that has been brought into consciousness, that has been named, identified, and recognized as borrowed rather than true, has already lost most of its grip. You do not even have to fight it. You do not have to argue with it or force it out or replace it immediately with something positive. The simple act of seeing it clearly, of recognizing it as someone else's baggage rather than your truth, begins the process of loosening its hold. And that loosening, that moment of conscious recognition, is where the real work of financial and energetic liberation begins. Which brings us to the final piece, the part that ties everything together. Because awareness, as powerful as it is only the beginning. What do you actually do once you've identified the inherited belief? How do you move from recognition to release? How do you go from carrying someone else's baggage to setting it down permanently and with grace? That is exactly where we are going, and I think you're going to find it simpler and more profound than you expect. So here we are, the final piece of this conversation. And I want to acknowledge something before we go any further. Because if you have stayed with me through everything we have covered today, you have already done something that most people never do. You have looked honestly at where your beliefs about money and abundance came from. You have seen how inherited programming operates silently in the subconscious, shaping your financial reality without your conscious permission. And you have learned to recognize the signal, that internal friction, that quiet flinch that your true self uses to flag the beliefs that do not belong to you. Now comes the part that everything else has been building toward. How do you actually let it go? Because this is where a lot of people get stuck. They have the awareness, they can identify the inherited belief, they can even trace it back to where it came from, the family dinner table, the classroom, the culture they grew up in. But then they stand there, holding the bag, knowing it is not theirs, and still not quite sure how to set it down. And I want to offer you what Bashar points to here, combined with what I have learned through my own journey and through working with clients navigating their own relationship with money and financial freedom. The first thing to understand is this: releasing an inherited belief is not a battle, it is a recognition. In the financial world, when you identify a position in your portfolio that is no longer serving your goals, an asset that made sense at one point but is now dragging down your returns, you do not go to war with it. You do not spend months arguing with it or trying to convince it to perform differently. You simply recognize that it no longer belongs in your portfolio, and you divest, cleanly, deliberately, without drama. This is exactly what Bashar means when he talks about divesting yourself of beliefs that have nothing to do with you. It is not a violent process. It is not a long, painful excavation of everything that has ever hurt you. It is a clear, conscious, almost business-like decision. This belief is not mine. It does not reflect my truth. It does not serve my financial vision or my energetic alignment. And I am choosing, right now, to stop carrying it. The second thing to understand, and this is the part that took me the longest to truly accept, is that you do not need to know exactly what to replace the belief with before you let it go. I think so many of us hold on to inherited beliefs because releasing them feels like stepping off a cliff into empty air. The old belief, as limiting as it is, feels solid. It feels like ground beneath our feet, and the idea of letting it go before we have something equally solid to replace it with feels terrifying. But here's what I have found, both in my own life and in the work I do with clients. The moment you release the inherited belief, the moment you genuinely set down the borrowed baggage, something happens in that space. Your true self, your natural frequency, your original relationship with abundance that existed before the world started handing you its stories, it begins to surface. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, organically, like something that was always there, finally having room to breathe. I remember the morning I truly let go of the belief that my financial security depended on a system outside of myself. It was not a dramatic moment. There was no lightning bolt, no sudden rush of certainty. It was quiet. I simply looked at that belief, really looked at it, and recognized it for what it was. My parents' fear, my industry's conditioning, a story about safety that had been handed to me before I was old enough to write my own. And I said very simply, internally, this is not mine. I did not choose this, and I am choosing right now to set it down. And what came into that space, slowly, imperfectly, but unmistakably, was something that felt like coming home, a sense of alignment, a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with external validation or financial metrics or anyone else's definition of success. Just a deep, settled knowing that abundance was not something I had to fight for or earn through suffering. It was something I could align with, something that was, at my core, already mine. That shift did not solve everything overnight. The practical work of building financial freedom, the decisions, the investments, the consulting, the daily choices still had to happen. But it happened from a completely different internal foundation, from alignment rather than fear, from genuine confidence rather than inherited doubt. And the results, over time, compounded in the way that the best investments always compound, were beyond anything I had trusted myself to imagine when I was still carrying someone else's baggage. So here's what I want to leave you with today. The next time you feel that internal friction, the next time a belief about money, about worthiness, about what is possible for you rubs you the wrong way as you think it or say it, pause. Just pause and ask yourself one simple question. Is this mine? Not, is this comfortable? Not, is this safe? Not, does this make practical sense? Just, is this mine? Does this reflect who I truly am and what I truly prefer to believe about myself and my financial life? And if the answer is no, if something inside you recognizes that belief as borrowed, inherited, someone else's story filed under your name, then you have a choice, the same choice that has always been available to you, even when you did not know it existed. You can set it down, not perfectly, not all at once, but deliberately, consciously, one recognition at a time, because financial freedom, real, lasting, aligned financial freedom, does not begin with a strategy or a system or a perfect investment plan. It begins with this, with the willingness to stop carrying weight that was never yours to bear. Your true self has always known what abundance feels like. It was only the borrowed beliefs that made it feel out of reach, and now you know the difference. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this video. It truly means the world to me, and I hope this conversation brought you something real, something you can carry with you starting today. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to explore together. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You never know whose life you might change with a single video. The books that have shaped my journey and that I personally recommend are all linked in the description below. Go check them out. They are worth every page. And don't forget, there is a free PDF in the description on how to interpret angel numbers and equal hours. Grab yours. It is completely free, and it might just change the way you see the signs the universe has been sending you all along. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.